The idea came to me the year I was celebrating a milestone birthday, and I just decided it was be an appropriate way to kind of mark the occasion, make it a little different from every other year
What's that? Yeah,
by
that's fine.
sending a
Thank you.
thank you to someone every week, to someone who had helped, shaped, or inspired me. So that was my only plan, as I thought I would write a weekly thank you letter to somebody who had changed my life for the better, with whom I'd crossed paths in the past. And it really snowballed from there.
What was one of the more surprising responses you received?
One of the more surprising responses I received was from one of my favorite authors, a music writer named Rob Sheffield. And he writes for Rolling Stone. And I just love the way he writes about music and life together in a way that's so unique and uniquely him. And I sent off that letter not expecting to get any response at all. He ended up speaking at a writers' conference in Texas, actually, a few months later. And my sister in law was there, bought one of his books and said, "Would you sign it for my sister in law, Nancy Davis Coe?" And he said, "I know Nancy. She wrote me a thank you letter." And the inscription in that book, I will treasure for the rest of my life. It was just, it obviously made an impression on him. And it made me think it's worth doing this. And it's worth reaching out even to people you might not be in daily contact with.
You're from Rochester. Did any of your thank you cards come here?
I must have broken the back of the Rochester mail carriers. I sent so many to Rochester. My family is still there in the area. I have so many friends from growing up in Brighton. And in fact, as the project went on and it became clear to me that I didn't just have to write letters to people, I started writing letters to the cities who had shaped me. And writing a thank you letter to the city of Rochester was one of the favorite ones I wrote because it gave me a chance to really think about how who I am as a person who's lived in California for 23 years really reflects who I was growing up in Rochester for the first 18.
Any advice for someone who is approaching a letter like this? How should they approach a letter like this?
So it's really pretty easy. And you just do these same three steps over and over. I broke it down: see, say, and savor. See is just spend some time thinking about the person to whom you want to write. What are the lessons they taught you? What are the ways they've inspired you? What are all the ways your life is better because you know them? And don't rush that. You can make it kind of slow and just think about all the ways they made your life better. And you're already making your brain more efficient at finding good things around you. The second part is say, that's writing the letter. And I just kind of used a regular formula. I kept going back to the same template over and over. You know, people they don't need an award winning letter. They just want to hear in your authentic voice that they matter, that they've made a difference. And so I tell people to really just sound like you. That's who they want to hear from. And then the third step is savor, where I tell you keep a copy of every letter you write. Because when you're having a low day sometime in the future, when you're feeling like you're out of resources or alone or really at the bottom of the barrel, you can pull out those letters and remind yourself that you've got a team supporting you. You've faced hard things before and people came to your help. And it's a really great way to remind yourself of the resilience and the support that you have.
I think most people can understand the immediate benefit of writing this. You feel good about doing this for someone else, but you talk about long-term happiness derived from a project like this.
I sure can.
Yeah.
Some of the long-term benefits I wanted to understand, because after I wrote the 50 letters, that this was back in 2016, I knew that I looked at the world differently. I knew that I was more efficient at not dwelling on the negative. I was much quicker in a negative situation to figure out what were the positives that came out of it. So part of the book included some research into the brain science, and it turns out that the more time you spend focusing on good things, the more time you spend looking for the positive in the world around you, your brain actually rewires to continue to do that. So by writing these letters, you're giving yourself skills that will pay off over the long term. And I'll tell you, the book came out December 2019, shortly before the pandemic. I did not intend to write a book that might help people weather the pandemic a little bit more easily, but I'm glad it came out when it did, because I know from readers that sitting down when things were feeling really scary and negative and dark, sitting down and writing a thank you letter was an effective way to pass that and remind yourself that there are good things around you still.
You talk about the ripple effect of this. How funny it must have been for you to find out that a Rochester anchor ended up talking about your idea, not even knowing that it was from you.
I got goosebumps when I saw the clip of you talking about that thank you letter. And the woman who wrote the letter to you, Jill, was kind enough to reach out to me via email to tell me that that had happened. So I was able to go look at the clip. I really got goosebumps because that's exactly what I hoped would happen when I wrote my book, that people would acknowledge the good people around them. Those people might be encouraged to do it. Those people might be encouraged to do it. So to watch you, do exactly that and sort of spread the circle a bit wider in my hometown was just the greatest thing. And I'm so grateful to this reader for starting that ripple in Rochester.
Obviously, you've written other works and you have a podcast. A lot of it talks about midlife. I think the phrase that you use is from being hip to breaking one. So how has that developed for you? How are you enjoying this process?
Well, I didn't become a writer until I was already in midlife. So I started off, actually, my first job was at Kodak. So I started off, in a business career. But when I started writing at the age of 40, I kept coming back to this topic that I knew a lot of people in midlife who were trying new things and tackling new challenges and really feeling gratified by the skills that they had accumulated up till this point in their lives. And so much of the narrative around midlife is about midlife crisis and everything's terrible and you're at the bottom of the happiness U curve. And so all of my writing, and I do have a podcast called Midlife Mixtape, I just try to share stories of what's good about being in the years between being hip and breaking one, because I think there's a lot. And there's some sad, terrible things too, but we shouldn't have to just suffer those without acknowledging the good stuff. So that's what I've tried to do with my writing, with the podcast, and it seems to resonate.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy, for your time.